Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to continue my segments on analysing units from the Chaos Space Marine Codex. Today I'm going to look at Khorne Berzerkers, an iconic unit that is pretty old when it comes to being used within the 40k gameplay. It's gone through editions where it's not been so useful to use them, and they've been rather lackluster. However, with the Herald of 8th edition, I feel that Khorne Berzerkers have got a very big lease of life in terms of their usefulness in the sort of game. And certainly for a combat unit, they do particularly well. So how this works is that I'm going to look at the unit as such within the codex, look at stats, war gear options and special abilities, and then I'm going to have a look at loadout suggestions and role that might be useful for them. Then I'm going to look at legion traits that might be useful, psychic abilities, which you might disagree with when it comes to Khorne Berzerkers, and stratagems that will be quite useful, and come to a bit of a conclusion on what I think is best for them. So yeah, with Khorne Berzerkers, let's have a look at them. So Khorne Berzerkers move 6 inches, pretty standard for Marines. They are not going to be moving any quicker, though they'd love to. Weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+. Bit surprised by the ballistic skill. You'd think these guys in their utter rage might be a little bit less useful at shooting, but still standard Marines, so they are still got their training as such. Strength 5, which is going to be a surprise. Stronger than your standard Marine and very much appreciated. Certainly does make them fulfill their function of probably destroying rank and file troops very, very efficiently. Toughness 4, which is standard for Marines, and again, pretty good, you can't argue with that. 1 wound, as you'd kind of expect for a Marine. 2 attacks apiece, which again is more than most Marines, but again, this is what you'd suspect from such a hard-hitting combat unit and utter insanity that is Khorne Berzerkers. 3 attacks on the champion. Leadership 7, kind of standard for Marines. They may be, you know, all about the butchering, but when they start losing guys, they start thinking twice, sort of, maybe not lore-wise. And leadership 8 for the champion, and then your standard 3+ save for power armor. So yeah, their strengths are obviously in the close combat area, where their strength and extra attack pay off dividends for the role that they wish to function as. So in terms of the weapon options they have, they are armed with chainsword, bolt pistol, frag and crack grenades. Pretty standard. A lot of other things might have bolt guns, but Berzerkers don't have time for them. So in terms of war gear options, it's very important to speak about this. They can, any Berserker may replace chainsword or bolt pistol with chain axe. I'll go into this a bit more detail, but this is almost a given. A chain axe being a melee weapon with +1 strength, -1 AP and 1 damage, which does help them quite significantly. Up to 2 Khorne Berzerkers may replace their bolt pistol with a plasma pistol. I'm not really sold when it comes to plasma pistols per se. They can be quite nice, but again I'll go into this a bit more detail about the merits of the chain axe itself. Berserker champion may replace bolt pistol and chainsword with weapons from the champion equipment. This I'll go into, but it really does give you a variety, especially for a champion, to do a lot more variety of damage that the unit can't do. And 1 Berserker in the unit may take Icon of Wrath. Always take Icon of Wrath. Always. I'll go into that. Special abilities, Death of False Emperor, I won't talk about in too much detail, but basically this allows you to get an extra attack if you attack units with Imperium keyword if you roll a 6 or plus in combat phase. These guys want to chop everything apart to get to Imperium units. Oh boy, they're going to cause some damage. So Death of False Emperor is quite nice. And last but not least, Blood for the Blood God. This unit can fight twice in each fight phase instead of only once. Oh boy. This is where these guys become dangerous. So this essentially means that if you fight twice and if you do the charging and everything, it gives the basic troop 4 attacks and 6 attacks on champion before any sort of upgrades, and we go into upgrades in more detail and things that can heighten this further. As rank and file troops, That's pretty insane. That's pretty darn good. You can't argue with that many attacks at that strength, and if possible with -1 AP. Really just makes them a really deadly unit. One thing I would say though, keep in mind that if you do charge, which Khorne Berzerkers love to do, you can only sort of swing at the units that you did actually charge. So when you do fight twice, you go for your second time, you consolidate into a second unit, you can't actually fight it unless you did charge it. Kind of basic rule, but I've seen some people forget that, but it's kind of important. All the bloodlust might get you to forget. Just like if they're not very good shooting, just charge them all and you know, take the overwatch and then start stabbing, but really it's up to yourself what you need to do. But generally that many attacks can be devastating. That's kind of what they do. So in terms of lowdown suggested role for Khorne Berzerkers, so you start the game with chainsword, bolt pistol, frag and crack grenades, which you know is all fair enough. However, don't field them this way. Please, I mean, pistols are not what Berserkers are wanting. These guys want to be dual wielding chain axes and chain swords and some sort of whirlwind of chain death. Sure, you're giving up your bolt pistol shot, which sure you can shoot in combat on the occasion. If you want to see, you know, a little bit of benefit from Khorne Berzerkers, you know, I don't see the benefit of the pistol, except for one, compared to taking the chain axe and the chain sword and dual wielding. So the pistol allows you to fire in the shooting phase. Let's face it, that's not where their strengths are. You can overwatch, which, let's face it, if something is charging Khorne Berzerkers, they're probably going to kill the Berzerkers in combat, so, you know, the bolt pistols are kind of useless. I mean, you don't charge Khorne Berzerkers confidently without going, right, cool, I'm going to probably kill them and take the attacks they throw back at me, it'll be fine, you know, so having that pistol to overwatch is not great. You can shoot them in your shooting phase. Well, if you're, you know, say your opponent, you know, charged you and then you get to shoot them in combat, then, you know, either you didn't wipe out the unit last turn and your opponent's maybe trying to roadblock you, you know, or they didn't wipe you out, or your opponent made a big mistake. Either way, if you're firing these in combat, I just don't see, you know, the reason why. Either it's not for your merit, and probably not for your opponents either. You know, I don't see, you know, a particularly strong reason for it, other than, you know, your opponent made a big mistake or is trying to hurt you. Ultimately, the main reason I see for using bolt pistols or plasma pistols, I'm not really sold to them either, is because the models are armed with them in the box. It has been about 10 years since I've actually made, you know, a box of Khorne Berzerkers, since I've actually seen what everything comes on the sprue. So I could be quite wrong that I don't think you can build them all with dual wielding chain sword and chain axe. Let me know on that one, because that's kind of like an important thing to mention. I'm pretty sure it was only in this edition that they sort of had the, you know, the dual wielding ability for them. Beforehand it was just take bolt pistol and you get an extra attack either way. So they've made it much more useful to probably field them in the sort of combat function of dual wielding chain axe and chain sword, but they're not modelled that way in the box. If you built some recently, let me know, so I can say no, you can build them that way and all the better, and I'll go out and buy a box myself. You know, because they're kind of the best to go that way. And I've got them armed bolt pistols at the moment, which is not ideal. So yeah, replace that bolt pistol for the chain axe. Why? Other than hopefully it should be obvious. +1 strength will bring you a great threat against toughness 3 because you become strength 6. Guard, Elder, Tal will die in more droves to these guys, and will help you threaten toughness 5 and 6 more reliably as well. However, I believe the strength is in the -1 AP. I can't stress that when you have weight of dice, which these guys can bring, -1 AP pays a dividend, especially on things like Terminators. I once threw about 80 to 100 attacks from Orc Boys onto Terminators, and I didn't cause a single wound. Well, I caused a wound, but they saved them all. If they'd been -1 AP, because there was a lot of 2s rolled as well, out of all the wounds I did cause, it would have slain quite a few Terminators. So I feel that -1 AP, and I think it is only 1 point to take the chain axe. It's 1 point to get +1 strength and -1 AP. Really does make it absolutely worth it. This means there are 2 attacks or 4 attacks you like striking later will be particularly deadly. Add in the fact you've got the chainsword as well, which essentially gives you another 2 attacks between them, which is excellent. Just makes you strike that little bit better. I mean, you know, if you've got 4 attacks at strength 6 -1 AP, and then you've got 2 attacks at your regular strength 5 but no AP, it's still deadly. It's 6 attacks per guy, and I mean, like, is that, you know, 8 attacks for the unit champion? Are you kidding me? That's a lot of dice, you know, in a 10-man squad. That can be particularly deadly. So I just think that getting the most out of your attacks by having them as you know, chain axe with your main attacks and then the chain sword with its extra attacks is just the best way to go. Last note I'll say is obviously take Icon of Wrath. Reroll charge is absolutely vital for a unit like this, because the second you fail that charge, you're going to spend command points to get there, or your opponent's going to punish you for it. So Icon of Wrath, for the amount of points it is an absolute must, I feel. So yeah, one thing I'd put as well is we'll talk about sort of the unit champion as well. So yeah, Wave Dice Nice, the unit champion, I personally prefer probably taking a power sword on him. Usually I don't like power swords so much because it's only -3 AP, but you keep your standard strength. But they are strength 5, which makes them quite nice. So -3 AP with 3 attacks and 6 when you get the second go around is pretty good. And I'm pretty sure you can also arm them with a Power Fist for options as well, because you can replace both the Bolt Pistol and Chainsword with items from the champion equipment list. Pretty sure that does include Bolt Pistol and Power Sword. Power Sword and Power Fists. Yep, both there. I imagine you can take Power Fist and Power Sword. Have some options in there. There might be times when you need to be Strength 10 and -3 AP D3 damage, in which case punch with your Power Fist with your ungodly amount of attacks, which will give you 6 attacks in total with that, or the Power Sword, which will give you 6 attacks with that, essentially, is absolutely deadly. So that's how I would feel a Berserker champion in total. So yeah, chain swords, chain axes for your basic troops. Get rid of all the pistols, you don't need them. You want to be, you know, collecting skulls, you know, in person. Icon of Wrath on one of the guys, and then your champion can be a wee bit adventurous. Power Sword, Power Fist, Power Axe, whatever you fancy. Gives you some options on there as well. But generally these guys can do pretty darn well. So yeah, that's how I would field them. Let me know what you think, your thoughts are on that. And let me know if they actually come that way in the box. I'm 90% sure you cannot have a Power Fist in the box, but I still think it's kind of worth it. So Legion traits, we'll speak about the Legion traits that can work with them. Obviously you're going to go, you know, World Eaters, Butchers, Nails, that's what Berserkers are about. They can't, you know, in case you go like Black Legion and you take these guys along, then, you know, there are other legions that do take in Khorne Berzerkers on occasion, and they can be quite useful in these. Let's start with one of the obvious ones, Alpha Legion, Hidden Plain Sight. Your opponent must subtract 1 from hit rolls that target units with this trait if they are more than 12 inches away. The -1 to hit is nice and all, however if you are fielding Khorne Berzerkers, they are going to probably be in transport to get them where they need to be quite safely, because, you know, these guys, you know, get shot a lot. However, we also have the option of Stratagem with these guys, which with this unit done right has potential to simply shut down your opponent turn 1. Unless you are me and choose the wrong target, which in one battle report I got a lot of abuse for choosing the wrong target for the charge, and I paid for it dearly. Probably one of my most embarrassing moments in this hobby playing. Either way, we'll get to forward operations later, if that wasn't obvious, but it does work quite well with these guys. Renegade Chapters, Dark Raiders. This allows a unit with this trait to advance and charge in the same turn. So, you know, essentially that, you know, being able to advance and charge will give you the option of more mobility, which is kind of what these guys want to do. If you are planning to foot slog them, then yeah, great, this is going to be a good trait for you. But these guys will catch bullets like no one's business, because your opponent will not want to let Khorne Berzerkers get near you. And they are only simply in standard marine toughness. So they will die in droves if they've got any sort of anti-powered armor weaponry. So yeah, you know, I would still say ultimately transport is going to be more of your best friend than taking Dark Raiders to, you know, allow you to advance and charge, but there is going to still be times where that will be an option. Certainly maybe mid-game, where you need to cover more of the battlefield, this can be a big asset. Finally, World Eater's Butcher's Nails. When a unit with this trait makes a successful charge, you can make one additional attack with each of the models in subsequent fight phase. So let's face it, this is sort of the natural partner, especially fluff-wise, and overall does pretty well. With the best loadout on your unit on the charge, that is nearly, I think, 8 attacks with the standard unit, and 10 if you go down the route with the chain sword on the champion, depending on your equipment. You know, if you take chain sword, you might take power sword or power fist, etc. But still, 8 attacks on the charge with standard guys. It's over 2 fight phases, but still 8 attacks and 10 possibly on the champion. Like, there are named characters with like less than a third of that amount of attacks. That's crazy. You know. Also, you know, the World Eaters in this one count your troop choices, so you can go more of these guys, get your battalion. You don't really need cultists, though it might be handy to have cultists, but you know, these guys will do well en masse. I've been charged by a World Eater's charge before, and it absolutely destroyed my line like there was no tomorrow. So yeah, these guys becoming troops, getting that many attacks, absolutely devastating. So yeah, Butcher's Nails works really well, especially if you do plan to put them in Rhino boxes, charge them up, jump out and charge. Pretty nice. Psychic abilities. Oh boy, it's funny, ain't it, how a unit famously, you know, an Allegiant, not a big fan of psychic abilities, sure do get quite a lot of advantages from the Chaos Space Marine Dark Hereticus psychic abilities. You know, if you want to, you know, go, no, Ross, stop, don't stop talking about psychic abilities, these guys don't need them. Fair enough, give me the hate. I can take it, I can understand. But these guys do get a huge amount from psychic abilities. So let's say, you know, you go Alpha Legion or Black Legion and you've got a Psyker running about who's going to give them a bit of a buff. It means they get to collect more skulls. And what, you know, Khorne does not care where the blood flows. As long as they're skulls, it's all good. You know, kinda. You can kill the Psyker afterwards, fluff-wise, whatever you want to say. But basically, they can take a wee bit of advantage from the psychic phase. Key one is obviously Prescience. Warp Charge 7, if manifested, select a Heretic Stash unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. You can add 1 to all hit rolls made for that unit until the start of your next psychic phase. So we do not care about this when it comes to psychic phase, unless you take plasma pistols, then go you. And in which case you can supercharge to your heart's content. But really this is all about the sort of combat phase. The amount of dice these guys can throw is spectacular. Adding +1 to hit will just bring you more dice, which will hurt your opponent more. So certainly in combat these guys become more of a bloody threat than usual. At the end of the day it's all about the skulls. So yeah, +1 to hit, awesome. And secondly, which is always very handy, Warp Time. Warp Charge 6, pick a Heretic Sash unit within 3 inches of the Psyker. This unit can immediately move as if it was the movement phase. A unit can only benefit from this once per psychic phase. These guys can get into combat and they want to get into combat a lot. You know, so having that extra push is always welcome. Imagine being Renegades where you can move and advance, and then Warp Time, move and advance again, charge, use Icon of Wrath and charge again, you know, and reroll your charge. Good times to be had all round. So certainly I can see that one being incredibly useful, especially on a sorcerer with a jump pack. Deploying down, you know, seeing your berserkers going, right guys, on you go, push forward, they go, cheers man, and they push forward and cause havoc to your enemy lines. Really, really helpful. Can't stress it enough that warp time and prescience in these guys is pretty good. Stratagem recommendations. Veterans of the Long War. Cost 1 command point. Use this stratagem when Heretic Hussars infantry or biker unit is selected to attack in the shooting or fight phase, excluding units from Renegade chapters. You can add 1 to all wound rolls made for the unit until the end of the phase. Bit unfortunate for Renegade units there. So I think the other week I got into a little bit of trouble for saying that Chosen were one of the best units in the shooting phase to use this on. I mean, okay, yeah, Matt, you know who you are, you're quite right, Obliteration Havocs really do well, and you know, I'll get to them, you know, and I'll explain them as well, but you did raise some good points, you know. They do quite well in the shooting phase, but I mean in terms of, you know, the combat phase, I'm pretty sure, other than Renegades that can't get advantages of it, you know, these guys are pretty much one of the best fighting units for veterans of the Long War. It just means they can threaten, you know, they've got way of dice, they're going to wound a lot easier, threaten bigger and tougher units more reliably, and can possibly rip the heart out of hordes even more efficiently. Am I wrong in saying this is the best unit when taken in like high enough to use Veterans of the Long War in the combat phase? I want to say no, but I'm sure someone will correct me. I'm sure this is the best unit for them in the combat phase. I'm like 90% sure. But you put doubts in me after last comments. Fury of Khorne, cost 3 command points. Use the stratagem at the end of the fight phase. Select a Heretic Hussars, Khorne infantry or biker unit. That unit can immediately fight again. So this is a super expensive stratagem to say the least, you know, 3 command points is a lot of investment. However, there will be occasions called upon where you can never have too much dice. Say you're fighting Magnus, for instance, who is out of command points, because seriously, you know, you need to make sure that, you know, he's out of command points, otherwise he'll probably intervene and destroy your Khorne Berzerkers because he doesn't want any of that, or you probably did get one fight phase with him anyway. But say you didn't manage to finish him off and he's not finished off your Khorne Berzerkers, well, you know, being in combat with the Demon Prince is not ideal. So, you know, you want to try and throw even more dice at him, add in Veterans of the Long War, which you've already had in subsequently 2 fight phases already. You've probably bombed down to quite a significantly low amount of wounds with the amount of dice you've thrown at him, and hopefully you can, you know, ground Magnus into the ground better than Russ. So yeah, this will be situational as it is expensive, and you've already had 2 fight phases with bucket loads of dice. But you know what, some things need to die, you need to reassure that they go down. Expensive, but it will be called upon at times, and if you've got enough dice with these guys, you may be able to pull off something spectacular. But again, 3 command points is expensive. Last but not least is Forward Operations, Alpha Legion only, 1 command point. So this one's super long, it's our basic sneak and murder stratagem, and oh boy do these guys help to murder by using this. Being able to deploy 9 inches, you know, over 9 inches away from an enemy unit means that if you get first turn, you can turn 1 charge and is all but assured move 6 inches, and you only fail on a double 1, I think, if you go to make a charge. Add on the Icon of Wrath, and the chance of rolling a double 1 is pretty slim. If you do so, please concede immediately. Let your opponent take you out for a drink, cheer you up, and look at the horrible luck you've been having. Because, you know, if you get double 1, when charging with these guys, I'm pretty sure your opponent will decide to delete them off the face of the planet. Joking aside, you can have multiple units deployed this way, and you know, it can really shut down your opponent pretty efficiently turn 1, and sometimes they might concede immediately. Not ideal, not very fun, but that's sometimes how this game is played. If you manage to get like 3 or 4 of these units to charge in and they all connect with various units, then fair play to you, you're a painful opponent to play against. Add in one of them getting veterans, etc, etc, and you're in for some good times, you know. So you can't really go wrong with forward operations. Even just 1 unit is still going to be a pain in your opponent's side. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Khorne Berzerkers. Units that they go well with, if you're going to take them in a good squad, I would probably stick them in a Rhino with, possibly if you want to augment them, a Dark Apostle, an Exalted Champion. That allows them to reroll all hits and all wounds. I believe as long as they stay sort of in synergized range, means these guys are extremely deadly and you get more efficiency from them. So Rhino with 8 guys, Dark Apostle, Exalted Champion, going to be super deadly, going to be pretty cheap. Your opponent is going to make sure that Rhino and its occupants are going to be gone. Have them with Khorne is pretty cool as well, though the radius bubble in there is not as high. But you know, Khorne himself can flip things like there's no tomorrow as well. So yeah, kind of nice to have him kicking about. Generally, I think these are a hugely improved unit from just about any edition that they've had previously, but they still have the weakness of being a unit within power armor, which is not ideal, with not so much survivability. So your opponent will target them, but if they don't target them and don't have a good job at deleting them, these guys will make them pay. So it's pretty nice. I've tried them a couple of times. I've had some good games with them. I've had some terrible games with them. But generally, Khorne Berzerkers are now an absolutely extremely nice, dedicated combat unit for Chaos Space Marines. And ultimately, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens if they do end up getting their own codex. Well, let's face it, you know, we've had it with Death Guard, we've had it with Thousand Suns, we can only hope what comes next. So yeah, thanks again guys, hope you enjoyed. Please comment, share, like and subscribe. And always interested to hear your guys' thoughts on units, interested to hear what you think about the sort of first, you know, god-specific unit I spoke about in the Chaos Space Marines. I'll probably speak about Marines, Plague Marines and Noise Marines next in the context of Chaos Space Marines. See what you guys think of that as well, which will be handy. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.